All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to cross-cultural communication and education. There's things have shifted around a bit this week. Firstly, Ramon is not with us, so those of you who are used to seeing a different guy with long hair, Ramon is not with you this week, but I'll be covering his cohort as well, and we hope he'll be back next week. One other thing that has shifted around is that although we have technically started with Unit 7, because the tutorials have moved around a bit, we are covering the material from Unit 6 this week. And then we'll be having tutorials for the next 2 weeks. So we'll have tutorials for 3 weeks in a row to wrap up the course. And the 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks, we will focus on some issues in the content from Unit 7. All right, so what we're going to be doing today is we're looking at, well, the topic for this unit is power, status, and influence. And I'm not sure if any of you have been online yet, have looked at the online content, but some of what we're going to discuss today overlaps with the online content. So what I'd like us to start off with is I've got an exercise that I'd like us to do. So I'm going to share this page with you. Okay, so we're going to do an exercise called How Would I Say That? And the idea is that this activity is a practical exercise focusing on what we might refer to as speech acts, and can be found on the Funda site for this course. So those of you who have been on the site already, this will be something familiar. You might have done it on your own, but I'd like us to discuss it together. So the second point there says that we are going to look at a number of speech acts. And what I'd like you to do is discuss them with those around you, specifically looking at how you might respond to each or some of these. So let's look at some of the examples that we've got here. Sorry, let me just get all of them. All right. So what we've got here is we have 17 different speech acts, or 17 different scenarios that I'd like us to think about for a few minutes. So for example, if we look at number 5, it says use humor to lighten the mood after a stressful meeting. So if that was the task, how would you, if that was the scenario, how would you respond to that particular type of situation? What would you say? What words would you use? How would you approach the situation? Or perhaps number 14, something that I've had to do on a number of occasions recently. Apologize for taking a week to respond to an email. How would you say that? How would you write that? How apologetic would you be? Would you give an explanation? Would you not? Okay, there are different ways that we could respond to this. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take a few minutes in each of your locations. If you're on your own, then you can perhaps just think about it on your own. Pick 1 or 2 or 3 of these, more if you have the time, and think about the different ways that you would respond to these situations. I'm especially interested in, if you can choose number 10, critique a supervisor or teacher for being late to a meeting. All right. So in addition to number 10, pick 1 and 2 and discuss it with the people around you and think of ways that you might respond to these different situations. All right. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes or so, maybe a bit more if you need it, and then I'll take the responses from you. All right. So I'll leave that up on the screen, and I'll give you a couple of minutes to think about it now and discuss it with those around you. Go for it. I see that one of our colleagues at Life Church in Turkey has typed a possible response to number 5 into the group chat. You can do that, or I'll be coming to you to allow you to speak if you'd like to. All right. I'll give you another 30 seconds or so. All right, so we've got a few comments in the group chat already. One of our colleagues at Life Church in Turkey in response to number 5, to use humor to lighten the mood after a stressful meeting, has said, well, that was fun. Eden Neisner, in responding to someone who has offended you, has said, what you said to me the other day has really offended me. It is also from Eden Neisner in response to number 8. Thank you for your help with my project. If you ever need help yourself in the future, I will be more than willing to help you. Sounds good. Number 6, from our colleagues in Boxburg. Okay, you would ask for an extension if possible. Yeah, I think especially the if possible edition could be helpful. And then back to Eden Neisner regarding number 16, giving someone feedback on their performance. If you want to improve your performance, you must practice every day. You must not be lazy. You must be willing to accept help. Sounds like some tough love. Two of the examples that are quite close to each other, number 10 and number 11, both look at critique. Number 10 says, critique a supervisor or teacher for being late to a meeting. Number 11 says, critique a subordinate or a friend for being late to work. So both of these involve critiquing somebody, critiquing their behavior, and for the same thing, critiquing them for being late. What would you say is the key difference between these two scenarios? Is there any difference? And is it possible, what would the difference be between these two scenarios if we look at number 10 and number 11? Any thoughts from your side? What do you think the difference between critiquing a supervisor or a subordinate would be? What are the potential implications, or what are the challenges involved? Okay, so our colleagues in Boxburg say that there are different levels of authority All right. Our colleagues in Nausna say one would be informal and one would be more formal. The teacher, formal, the friend, informal. Coming back to our colleagues in Boxburg, you say different levels of authority. Why would that matter? What are the implications for that interaction? How would that impact the interaction or the consequences of that interaction? You're welcome to speak directly if you'd like to. You can turn the microphone on and reply. Okay, our colleagues in Boxburg say you would feel more at ease to confront a friend. And the reason for that, what would the reason for that be? Okay, the response is you feel less intimidated. Thank you to our colleagues in Boxburg. I can't see you. The video doesn't seem to be coming through, but glad to know that there's someone there interacting with us. And this is actually an interesting point. You know, you would feel more at ease confronting a friend. You'd feel less intimidated. And there's actually a connection between this and something that we touched on in the first unit. I want to remind you of these so-called axioms of communication that we discussed in the first unit. You know, you cannot not communicate. Every interaction has a content dimension and a relationship dimension. And that's really the one that I want to touch on here, you know, that the relationship we have with the person with whom we are communicating impacts the communication interaction. We've said, so we've discussed here that the difference between critiquing a friend versus a teacher or supervisor is that different levels of authority, different levels of authority that you each hold. It impacts the relationship that you have with one another, and therefore impacts the way that you communicate with one another, whether it's formal or informal. Also, whether or not you feel intimidated by the person. I'm guessing it's definitely more likely that a boss would be more intimidating than a friend. Although I guess some of us might be intimidated by friends as well. Now, the reason that I bring this up is that it's something to keep in mind when we are communicating with people, that although we know that every communication has a content and a relationship dimension, different degrees of status or power, the positions that we hold, the levels of authority that we have impact the way that we communicate with people. Interestingly enough, what I've noticed is that sometimes even being given the floor, being given the opportunity to speak to a group, gives you a degree of power or authority in a space, being a lecturer, being a teacher, being a manager. And I'm guessing some of you have these experiences, and you might not have noticed it, or perhaps you have. But these different relationship dynamics, these different power dynamics, impact what you would or wouldn't say to different individuals. I think we can even see this within family situations, the relationship dynamics within a family, the things that you might say to an older sibling versus a younger sibling, the things that you would say to a cousin versus an aunt or an uncle. These relationship dynamics impact the way that we communicate with one another. And when we engage with people, it's important to be aware of these relationship dynamics and to take that into account when we communicate with people, especially being aware of the differences in status and power and how that could perhaps impact the communication. But coming back to the readings for this particular unit, one of the readings that you touched on referred to something called crucial conversations where the stakes are high, opinions vary, and emotions run strong. And I think you might agree with me that each of these scenarios that we looked at earlier are examples of crucial conversations. You know, the types of scenarios whether you're talking to a boss or a family member, you know, their emotions run strong, stakes are high, opinions vary. Unfortunately, we don't always respond to these crucial conversations in positive or successful ways. In fact, the authors of that section, they argue that when it comes to these crucial conversations, we avoid them, we can face them and handle them poorly, or we might face them and handle them well. What do you think, and I'm interested to hear what you think, if we think about these crucial conversations where, and if I go back to the previous slide, where stakes are high, opinions vary, emotions run strong, why do you think we might respond in different ways? What do you think the reasons might be, or the factors might be, that would influence whether we respond positively by facing these situations and handling them well, or whether we handle them poorly, or worst case scenario, if we completely avoid these conversations? Based on your experience, your life experience, what do you think the factors are that would shape the different ways that we might respond to these situations? Any thoughts? I see some movement in Amanzum 30.
Hi. I would the way you can handle crucial conversations, it should not be avoided, but it should be handled with a lot of care, with utmost care and sensitivity as well. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what do you think the possible reasons are that we would choose to avoid them, or choose to face these situations? What do you think some of the reasons or the factors are? I see some comments coming through from our other colleagues, but seeing that you're up there, Amanzum 30, what do you think?
What are the possible reasons? Usually what's coming to my mind right now is usually a family matter where something tragic happened within the family and one would not choose to discuss it at all, but rather bottle them inside of you. And yeah, that's what I can think of right now.
Okay, so you're saying that where it's a difficult situation and it's difficult to handle, that it might be challenging. I see some other comments coming from Boxberg and Neisner. It's something here about, I often try to change the subject. Our colleagues in Neisner say your emotions. If somebody made you angry, then you will respond with your emotions being the main influence. You would respond being upset or angry. Am I right in understanding that that is perhaps the reason that we might handle these situations poorly? Yeah, I think that could be a valid reason that we might handle these situations poorly. So what do you think it would take for us to handle these crucial conversations where, and I just want to go back to my notes here, where the stakes are high, emotions run strong, and opinions vary? What do you think it would take for us to be able to face them and to be able to handle them well. What do you think it would take to achieve that in these crucial conversation situations? Okay, I see a comment here. Okay, some two good comments here from Neisner. To have self-control, to stay calm. Okay, good one. Boxberg, a willingness to listen. I think those are both good suggestions. Again from Neisner, to use the I message instead of you. Okay, would somebody in Neisner perhaps like to speak to us and explain what do you mean by I messages instead of you? Hi there.
When you use the I message, then you are not really, blaming that other person for what is wrong or what is upsetting the situation also, but you convey how you feel. You convey your feeling so that the other person can acknowledge and see what you feel instead of playing the blame game. Can you hear me?
Yes, I heard you. Thank you very much. I think that's really good advice. The idea of I messages instead of you, so less accusations and rather how you are feeling in the situation. I think it's important, and I want to add to what our colleague Neisner just said. Just to clarify that what Patterson and the other authors discuss as crucial conversations in the reading are not always conflict situations. Something can be a crucial conversation, but there might not be any conflict involved. So, for example, for argument's sake, you'd like to know if there's any possibility of getting a raise at work. Okay, the stakes are high, so yes, the first criteria is met. Opinions vary. There could quite possibly be different opinions about whether a raise is possible or deserved, and emotions run strong. I think in many situations, things around work and money there could be strong emotions attached to it, and yet there might not be any conflict when you're going into that conversation. But according to Patterson and co, it does meet the criteria of a crucial conversation. So yeah, thank you very much to Neisner and to our colleagues in Neisner and Boxberg. Some excellent comments and suggestions on how to engage in these crucial conversations. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is for those of you who haven't, to log on to Funda, to engage with some of the additional material that we've discussed and that we've put online, and engage with some of the comments. And I'm looking forward to seeing your comments as well as those who might view this video at a later stage to hear what you have to say. But I'd just like to push forward for a second because earlier I mentioned that every interaction has a content dimension and a relationship dimension. And I mentioned that that things like authority, formality, power differences, these impact the way that we communicate, etc. And I think one of the arenas that we have discussed, at least with some of the contact students, is in relation to power and status and influence, is that we've looked at the notion of mass media, communication as mass communication. And I shared this diagram with them where, in the first unit we looked at the elements of communication, and we focused on the fact that in most communication, we are both the sender of the message as well as the receiver of messages at the same time. However, when it comes to our media consumption, the messages that we receive in the media, there's some emphasis, at least at first, on our being the receivers of these messages. And because more often than not, we don't have too much influence on what is on the content of the media. We watch television, we watch the news, etc., etc. And people with power and status are able to send messages to us. And one of the reasons that we brought up the mass media in this unit is that we wanted to encourage you to engage with the media critically, to think about the types of messages that you receive, to think about what it is that people are saying, the types of messages you're receiving. And the reason for this, and I want to grab two quotes from one of the readings from Castell's. Okay, from the Castell's reading. And here he's connecting communication and power. He says, and power relations in our social and technological context are largely dependent on the process of socialized communication, on the capacity to influence people's minds. All right? In relation to politics, which is a topical issue at the moment, and with the elections coming up tomorrow, I thought this quote was quite interesting. He says, the importance of personality politics is related to the evolution of electoral politics, usually determined by independent or undecided voters that switch the balance in every country between the right or the center-right and the center-left. So personalities, the way that personalities are presented to us in the media, impact our lives, impact processes like the elections, etc. But if we come back to this first quote, the idea that power relations in our social and technological context are largely dependent on the process of socialized communication, that this capacity to influence people's minds. How do we see the media? Can you think of ways that that the media influences us? If we think of newspapers, social media, music, movies, television, radio, if we think about these different types of media, all right, what are some of the ways that they are perhaps able to influence our minds? Can you think of examples? Anyone? Okay. Our colleagues in Boksburg say the media influences your views on crime in our country. Could you give us a specific example, perhaps? The news always emphasizes the negative. Okay, thank you to our colleagues in Boksburg. And I guess one of the potential impacts of that is that we are always concerned, skeptical, perhaps even afraid of crime, which perhaps at times is justified, but I guess the influence is that, or perhaps my saying that it's justified is the impact of the media. Because I'm not beyond being influenced either. Any other thoughts from Nijsler or Manzintoti? Can you think of ways that various types of media perhaps influences us, influences our minds? Okay, our colleagues in Nijsler say health and fitness. This is what you should eat. This is what you should eat. This is how you should look. This is something you shouldn't eat. this is something you should. Yeah? I think if we think of TV shows like Doctor's Orders, you know, these health shows, or even what's the doctor's name? The American guy, Dr. Oz. Yeah, that's a good example. Definitely. You know, to come back to the political example, I think if we look at the last couple of years, two personalities who have at times been at each other's throats in the media is Helen Ziller and Julius Malema. And on one occasion, Helen Ziller referred to Malema as an Nkwenkwe, which is an uncircumcised boy, you know, a boy, somebody who doesn't know things, who's wet behind the ears. On the other hand, Malema referred to Ziller as that racist girl with her boyfriends and concubines. And this is what the media, yes, these public personas, these people who have significant power and influence, these are their messages, but they are able to share these messages with us because they are editors, publishers, TV producers, journalists, etc., who act as gatekeepers when it comes to what information we are able to access. But what I'd like to encourage you to do is to, when you see things like this in the media, these comments from people like Julius Malema, from Helen Ziller, other public personas, when we think of the health and fitness shows, the comments about crime in our country, it's easy to take these messages at times and just to kind of swallow them hook, line, and sinker. But my challenge to you is to think critically about the fact that these communications are the products of numerous people's inputs, and there are people who act as gatekeepers when it comes to our access to information. And I want to come back to Castells, and I'm hoping you've read the Castells reading. It's one of the prescribed texts, and I think it's really a fascinating text. But one of the things that he says, and I want to give you this quote: "Yet the main issue is not the shaping of minds by explicit messages in the media, but by the absence of given content in the media. What does not exist in the media does not exist in the public mind, even if it could have fragmented presence in individual minds." So what he's arguing here is that we need to be aware not only of who's sending these explicit messages to us, like these comments about Malema, about Zuma, about Zilla, about other public personas, Brad and Angelina, Steve Hofmeyer, other local and international celebrities. Not only these explicit messages, but to ask critical questions about what is being excluded, what is absent from these messages in the media, and why might they be absent? Why would these gatekeepers perhaps prevent certain bits of information being made available to us? Unfortunately, because of the limited time, we've only really scratched the surface of some of these issues. But the main intention of the session was just to get us thinking about how differences in power and status could influence the ways that we communicate with one another, whether we're talking to a colleague, a boss, a family member, but also to think about how power, status, influence, and control of the media influences the ways that, or shapes the messages that we receive in the media. And to challenge you to think critically about the messages that we receive in the media, whether it's in the newspaper, on social media, in the news, on television, on the radio, music videos, movies, that the messages, the images, the symbols we are receiving, that we don't necessarily cast them out immediately and not simply accept them hook, line, and sinker, but think critically. think about the communication processes involved. Who are the people involved? What intentions, motives might be behind certain messages? Am I being cynical? No, I don't think so. I think it's important to think critically, to be aware of the full communication cycle when we think about the messages that we engage with. So really, that's all that I'd like to share with you for today. I want to thank you, our colleagues in Neisner, Boxberg, Mans and Toti. Some of my sessions, some of the chats are not always that interactive, but I want to thank you for participating today. You know, some of your comments have really been on point, and your interaction adds value to these tutorial sessions. So before we close off for today, are there any comments or questions either about the content or about the course as a whole? Any other comments or questions that you'd like to add? Okay, I don't hear anything.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
On Funda, it doesn't seem to be accessible because I've been clicking on the icons and nothing is. It's only the first. It's only the first, how would I say that exercise that which is accessible, but the others are not at all. So I've been clicking on them for the past few minutes and nothing's happening, as well as at my home. So yeah.
Okay. I'll take another look at that. Is anybody else having a similar problem? Okay, Nazen is having a similar problem. And there's a question about the assignment marks. Yeah, we almost done marking the assignments. You'll be getting them back in the next couple of days. Apologies for the delay. Okay. Sometimes if on Funda, we set certain restrictions on the access to certain material. So if you haven't completed all the activities, so if there's an option to comment on something, if you haven't commented, then the next page or the next bit of material won't be available. So you are required to comment where there's a comment section, or to open all the pages. So one of the reasons that you might not be able to access certain pages is that you perhaps haven't commented where you've been asked for comments, and so the next page has not opened up to you. So I will take another look at it later, but perhaps just check if there isn't a comment section you haven't commented in, or something like that. Because of that, sometimes there are restrictions that we place because we want you to engage and to comment in each of the sections. So you won't be able to access the next bit of material before you've engaged with the previous bit and commented on it. So just take a closer look at that. Okay, another comment here from Neisner. It doesn't give you a warning or tell you anything. You just can't click and open the work. Okay, as I said, I'll take another look at it. I've got another tutorial at 4 o'clock, so I won't be able to do it immediately right now. But around 5 o'clock, I will definitely take a closer look at it. And if there's anything that hasn't been open, I will open it. But just double check that you have commented where necessary and engage with the material where necessary, because we have put some of those restrictions in place to ensure that you go through all the material. All right. Any other comments or questions? Where do we find this on Funda? If you log into Funda and you look at the page or the site for this course, on the left-hand side, you will see that there's a section called Lessons. Unfortunately, let me see. Okay. Let me see if I can log into Finder quickly. Okay, let me just share this with you quickly. All right, so this is the page. You see I've selected the page for this course. And on the left-hand side, you will see lessons. All right. And so there are times that certain pages. So, for example, if I go down to Unit 6, Power, Status, and Influence, I open the first page. All right. So where you see an asterisk next to a page, all right, it's something that is most likely going to be required. So if you don't go onto that page, if you don't do any exercises that are necessary in there or comment where necessary, then the next bit of material, the next section might not be open to you. So the reason that we do that is to ensure that you are engaging, that you aren't skipping steps, because we want to encourage you to engage with all the material. All right. So let me just see here. If I go into this page. So this is the how would I say that exercise. And here's a, can see all the anonymous comments. So here are a number of comments. So if you've been on this page but you have not commented, then you might not be able to access the next page. And so that is really that's the type of restriction that we have put in place. All right. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to bring this session to an end. I hope that has been helpful. So please log on to Funda, go through the work, and be sure that you go through all the material, because we place it there because we believe it's important to help facilitating your learning experience. So I'm going to have to end the session right now. To those of you who have spent this time with me, thank you for being with us today. And to those of you who are viewing this at a later stage, I hope that this video has been helpful. And please feel free to get in touch with us if you have any further comments or queries. All right, so that's the end of this broadcast, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.